I think something that was surprising was meeting such impactful organizations that had been in their fields, working in their countries for like the past 2 decades or more than that, but were still using paper for their data collection. I found that very surprising.
Welcome to Survey and Beyond, the data collection podcast by SurveyCTO. We share expert insights and practical tips on data collection and analysis, discuss innovative methods and tools to enhance data quality and security, and demystify complex data concepts to help people collecting data all around the world. I'm your host, Marta Costa. Welcome to a special episode of Survey and Beyond. Last week, our team had the privilege of attending DIHAD 2025, the Dubai International Humanitarian Aid and Development Conference and Exhibition. This year's theme, Humanitarian Aid and Development in a Polarized World, resonated with us and left us thinking deeply about the role of data, collaboration, and innovation in humanitarian work. In this episode, you will hear from the SurveyCTO team about who we met, what inspired us, and what we are taking away from this event. So welcome, Catherine and Maria. It's really a pleasure to have you both here with me. Can we start by a brief introduction of yourselves?
Hi, everyone. My name is Maria Pervova. I'm originally from Oregon on the West Coast of the United States, but for the past 3 years, I've been living in Colombia. Here, I've been enjoying learning how to speak Spanish and salsa dancing. I really recommend it. Before, I studied economics and international development, and I had some opportunities within nonprofits and government education. And all of those interests coalesced in my role in SurveyCTO. So here, I, along with Catherine, we're on the same team. We guide impactful organizations through their process of technology-driven process improvement. And so we help these organizations unlock growth by optimizing the tools that they use every single day. For myself, my personal experience coming from working with low-resource nonprofits, I was once a skeptic of how technology could be used for good and whether we should invest in technology until I saw the results with my own eyes working at SurveyCTO. So very excited to be here today and discuss our experience at DIHAD.
I'm Catherine Kendall. I'm from Florida in the United States, and I work with Maria on the business development team at SurveyCTO. My background is in nonprofit healthcare operations, innovation, and program management. And in my previous roles, I've learned from my own experience that digitizing processes, even though it can be challenging going through that process, it does lead to increased revenue and program growth. And so because of that, I'm really passionate about helping that high-impact organizations discover new ways that they can use technology to improve their processes. And I felt like that came through a lot at DIHAD. And we'll get into this, but I felt like there was a lot of exciting opportunities that we met with high-impact organizations doing great work.
Wonderful. Okay, so just some context. The three of us last week went to Dubai. We attended DIHAD 2025. It was the first time for the three of us to attend this conference. Did you have any expectations?
I don't think I had too many expectations. The only thing I was expecting was that it would be really big because we knew it was in the World Trade Center. And that expectation was met because DIHAD was already a huge conference with so many different attendees and organizations there. But in addition to that, in the same conference center, there were like 2 or 3 other conferences happening at the same time. So it was definitely on a larger scale than previous conferences we've attended.
I don't know that I had expectations as much as there were 2 things that I was looking forward to, and they're what I look forward to whenever I go to any conference, and that's one, continuing to learn what's going on in the humanitarian sector around the world and just continuing to increase my knowledge and understanding of the challenges and the work that's being done. And then networking with thought leaders and individuals in this space who are really making an impact. So this was not my first time to the World Trade Center. And then I had attended ADEX in October, which there's a lot of continuity between the 2 conferences. So I think I had some idea as to what it would look like, but it was mostly looking forward to the networking and the learning opportunities that came out of DIHAD.
I think I also didn't have a lot of expectations, but definitely it would be a big conference and exhibition. But I think I was also expecting that we would have a lot of attendance from organizations or even suppliers from the MENA region, so Middle East and North Africa. So I think that was my main expectation before going. Did you have any specific surprise when comparing with the expectations you had?
I think more like admiration than surprise. Because as you mentioned, there were a lot of organizations from the MENA region. And I just really admired the work that they're doing, the dedication, the compassion, the resiliency and fortitude and patience that I see among these organizations to help to enter into areas where there has been either natural disasters or political strains, and just the commitment to see not just humanitarian aid delivered, but to see these communities develop and thrive. And so I found it very inspiring to meet with these organizations and hear the work that they're doing day in and day out.
Yeah, I really second that. And along with that, I think something that was surprising was meeting such impactful organizations that had been in their fields, working in their countries for like the past 2 decades or more than that, but we're still using paper for their data collection. I found that very surprising in comparison to some other conferences that we've been to in different parts of the world where people are using SurveyCTO or other data collection platforms or even Excel, but something digital. And I found that even, organizations, there was an impactful organization I met that has been building schools in Pakistan and supporting orphans with their education. There was another that was based out of Ethiopia and was supporting blind girls with education and health services. And all of these organizations are still doing their data collection on paper. So thinking about the incredible impact that they've had for decades now, I wonder how that could flourish further if they had a digital data collection platform, if they could save time, if they could save energy, if they could more easily demonstrate all the impact that they're having on the ground to the donors and the partners if they were to digitize. So I found that very surprising and also reinforced the need for platforms like SurveyCTO to be joining the conversation.
That's a great point. And maybe we can move to that point of what were the common themes and pain points that you found from your connections. Do you think that's the lack of digitization is definitely a pain point and a common theme that came across in your conversations?
I think so. I also heard a lot of organizations that were struggling with figuring out how to track their records. Most of these organizations are working with individuals who are vulnerable. And so there's a lot of vulnerable data. Many organizations are working with women who are victims of GBV. And with that, they want to be able to protect the data and provide services. And how do you do that with paper or with Excel? I'm personally a huge fan of Excel, but there's only so much that you can do with that. Another limitation is you have multiple people contributing to an Excel spreadsheet. And so that increases your risk for human error. My personal nightmare would be that a formula would be broken. And so there's, how do you manage that? How do you, especially when you have a lot of volunteers who are providing services, how do you find a way to track the services, track the records, track the data in a way that protects the privacy of the individual, but is also at the same time user-friendly and easy for a volunteer or a staff member to come in and contribute to the records that they're keeping.
And from my conversations, my general feeling is that now people talk a lot about technology, more than ever before. And I do think there is a general sense that people can leverage from technology to become more efficient and to provide better services. But I think there is still a gap between understanding their data needs or their needs in general, and how does that translate into how technology can help them succeed. So that's been a general feeling for me.
To add on to that, in some of the conversations that I was having, I was noticing that people were talking about two things, about depth and breadth in how they're able to support the people that they're supporting, whether they're refugees or women or students out of school. Depth being the quality of support that they're able to provide. If you're supporting a student at a school, you're probably supporting them over time. So tracking the data in a way that's efficient and easy to manage will enable you to know, what has their progress been over time? How have they improved? What kind of education have we provided them to the people that you're already serving? But it also can help you scale so you can serve more without losing that quality. So I think those are things that many organizations are thinking about.
Were there any connections or conversations that excited you the most?
Well, I think with my background in healthcare, I really enjoyed the conversations with humanitarian organizations that are administering medical services in these hard to reach areas, or these the IDP camps, or other places where it's really challenging. I think health services is such a fundamental need for humans, and so the fact that they're providing these services was really inspiring to me. But then also hearing the challenges that they were experiencing, for example, delays in care, because usually they rely on medical professionals as volunteers to come in. And so these medical professionals don't have access to the individual's medical records or data because they're not tracked digitally. And so there can be a delay in care, or they're not exactly sure how to treat the patient or what services to provide. And so I loved collaborating in those conversations, because there's a challenge that we know that we can fill. We can share about, NIACA and other organizations who have used SurveyCTO to digitize that process, and then share how that impacts patient care. It allows individuals to get the care that they need with that record there, ready and accessible for the medical provider or the volunteer who's providing those services. So it's really exciting because there's a challenge that we know we have a solution for.
Some of the conversations that I enjoyed were along similar topics, but I would say that one topic of conversation that kept coming up was the idea of innovation. And I think right now, innovation and AI, they are buzzwords. They are closely intertwined in our conversations. And this is why I think it's really essential to have conferences like these, because everybody is trying to innovate right now. Everybody is trying to see how they can use AI for good. How can you customize it based on specific use cases for the international development sector, along with many, many other sectors. But it got me thinking about, what is innovation? Innovation is really the process of developing new ideas, methods, or technologies, solving new problems, or potentially solving problems in novel ways. And something that I have been noticing is, as we've been going to conferences, people are kind of solving the same problems, because across INGOs, many INGOs tend to have the same problems, and they have very excellent, incredible IT teams. And they're building custom solutions. And sometimes we've been having some conversations, especially at DIHAD, where I have come across IT teams that have built solutions for things like features that SurveyCTO has. For example, automated quality checks for managing your data quality, being alerted anytime a submission comes in that's out of a range. And there are teams that are developing solutions for problems that have been solved in some way. So I was really excited to have conversations, to be letting people know that, we have some solutions for these problems. Maybe it would be beneficial to use SurveyCTO for the foundation of your data collection. And then you can innovate further. You can be off on your way, having more time and energy to solve some more problems that haven't yet been solved, and thinking through synergies of existing technologies and also the arena of new possibilities now out there due to things like innovations in AI.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. And I think that brings the importance of people understanding what is interoperability and having a tech stack, because sometimes they are trying to build something that does it all, right? And we are best in class for data collection, and it's I think it's just so important for people to understand how flexible and how leveraging it could be to think about technology in that way. That you can interoperate with different systems, different softwares that have different purposes and different strengths. I wanted to zoom out a little bit. We have been talking a lot about the specific conversations we have had with organizations about their data needs, because that's our, that's our industry, those are our services. But I wanted to ask you if you have heard in this conference a lot about the humanitarian sector challenges and pain points in general, if there are any hot topics you want to share about what this industry is facing right now. And I think some of the main challenges that I'm going to share are not just challenges that we have been hearing now at DIHAD. It has been based on a lot of our experience from, since last year, we attended a lot of other conferences from the humanitarian sector. And I think we have been hearing a lot about, the localization concepts, and how important it is to think more and more and more about this shift of power, and to think about more locally led interventions and programs. So I've noticed that there were a lot of sessions about this, the localization versus globalization theme, and it was definitely a buzzword in this conference too. And the other thing that I have been noticing is the struggle that a lot of the international organizations around the world, that have a lot of presence in multiple countries, to standardize their work in the field, because they operate in multiple countries. Different countries have different requirements and criteria. They also have some obligations to the local government, and then brings a lot of challenges to the organizations to collect standardized data, and to make sure that different departments and different teams are following the same processes and collecting the same indicators, and so on. So I feel like these are the two main topics that I have been hearing about.
I agree. And I'll just add with that standardization and regulation adherence. On one hand, humanitarian organizations are struggling to identify how do they adhere to regulations within the country or the region and the particular laws of that country. But then also donors all have different requirements for the type of data that they're tracking or the way the services are being provided. And so donors also have their own requirements. And so humanitarian organizations are wanting to adhere to all of that, both government and donors, and that can be complex, especially if sometimes those requirements conflict with one another.
And actually thinking about it some more, I think that that issue or the challenge of localization is also closely intertwined to the challenge of standardization. There was a quote or a statistic that really stuck out to me from the conference. We visited a booth of a consulting organization called Connecting Research to Development. At a really cool booth where they had tables with kind of iPads embedded in the tables, and on them they had a slideshow and a bit of a pop quiz about international development. And one of the questions that they asked was, how much of international development funding goes to local nonprofits, those working locally within their countries, those small nonprofits? And the answer was only 2%. That is such a small figure. And I think that is something that is a big part of the challenge of enabling localization, so that the power, the funds, and like the data is controlled by the local nonprofits. A lot of the funding goes to very large bodies, government implementers, government contractors, and very little of it seems to trickle down to the local nonprofits. Connecting that to standardization, it might be that a lot of the huge INGOs, they have a strong understanding of the requirements from donors, the requirements from a government compliance standpoint. But then if, for example, relating to data collection, one large global body, for example, ABC, random INGO, ABC International has operations across the world in all different countries. And if they standardize to just one tool, then they own that tool, right? And it doesn't give the ownership to the local nonprofits that may be working on the ground. Whereas, for example, in considering a SaaS software, if you're able to give uh, one server, one project access locally to that nonprofit, that might shift the power dynamics a bit. But this is all a very complex, ongoing conversation that we had many conversations with large INGOs at DIHAD that are still working through those kinds of dynamics.
So was there a moment or, a story or even a quote that you already mentioned, Maria? Maybe that was the one that really stuck with you in the conference.
Not so much a quote as much as it was, I would say, just the spirit of many of the NGOs there was this commitment to empowerment and sustainability. And so, for example, one organization, I met with the founder, and his family had grown up in a camp in Bangladesh. He had since come to the U.S., built a successful career, and now has a foundation that is going back and helping families within that same camp. And just really to see that come full circle was very inspiring to me. It was something that's caused me to reflect, and something we should all be reflecting on, where we come from and how can we use what we've been given now to give back to the community, to help others, to be empowered, to be able to have the resources that they need in order to thrive within their communities. And really just this commitment to see communities thrive and become self-sustaining was something that I experienced across all of the NGOs. And so I think that's something that idea has really stuck with me.
I think that was my favorite part of the conference too. Just because we're based on the Western Hemisphere, just due to the time zone differences, we don't really get to connect with a lot of organizations that are based out of Central Asia or the MENA region. So it was a very unique opportunity to be able to connect with those players, especially there were so many local nonprofits that were just working in their home country. And I found it very inspiring.
Yeah, I definitely second that. The other thing that stuck with me, just because I'm so data driven, because of our work, I'm always so used to take a look at these projects, the humanitarian projects and programs, from a data perspective on their operations or how they are evaluating their programs and projects. And I never really thought about the role of humanitarian diplomacy in general in their work and how important it is. And I attended a workshop related to that. And in the same booth you were mentioning, Maria, where we took a quiz, we had a question that we were all quite surprised about the answer, which was, what is the, I think this is the question, maybe let me know if I'm, I don't know, if I'm misleading people in any way, but I think the question was, what's the main obstacle to provide on a humanitarian crisis? I think that was the question. And it was a multiple choice, and the answer was border control. And the three of us were quite surprised by that. And looking back and attending the workshop about humanitarian diplomacy, it just provided me with a new angle of how important it is, this negotiations and strategic planning whenever you are providing humanitarian services. So I think that was quite enlightening to me. Do you think that DIHAD shifted your view in any way, either about our sector or our role in it? Was there anything that changed for you?
I think it definitely expanded my view. Like as Maria mentioned, just from time zones, this is not a region of the world that we typically interact with. So I was really grateful for the opportunity to go and to learn, to hear more. I think particularly when natural disasters happen, we hear about it once. The news cycle runs for a couple of days on a natural disaster, and then we don't continue to hear about it. But, things like earthquakes or floods, there is a really long-term humanitarian response that needs to come into those communities to help them rebuild, to help them recover. And so I think it was good for me to go to these parts of the world and hear, the ongoing challenges that they're experiencing. It also helped me see how SurveyCTO can make a huge impact in this space. I think Maria's touched on it. Marta, you've touched on it as well. Volunteers, these organizations, they're going in for one reason, and that's to help the people there. And if they're having to, write stuff down on paper or try to put something in Excel or trying to track all of this manually, it actually becomes an undue burden that's preventing them from doing what they want to do. And so I loved having conversations with so many organizations there, talking about how we can digitize their processes, make it easier. So it's just one less thing that if a doctor is coming to volunteer, it's one less thing that they have to worry about, right? They can simply input the data into SurveyCTO and focus on, the care that they're giving. And so being able to partner with organizations in that way was something that was really exciting, that this is, we have a simple solution for a complex problem where we can help you focus on what you do and what you want to do, which is serving others and serving these communities and helping them to become resilient, thriving parts of the world.
Absolutely. I think DIHAD did not change my perspective of the sector, but more so reinforced the need for digitization, for data collection platforms like SurveyCTO. It was also a very positive experience because in this current political climate, a lot of changes have been being made, and many conferences that we previously attended uh, stateside relating to international development have been canceled this year. So we were very pleasantly surprised to see that DIHAD continued. There was a huge attendance of various organizations there. So it left me with a bit of optimism to see that, yes, budgets are constrained. The ground is shifting. There's not as much stability as there was in times past, but the work is still continuing. There are still so many organizations that are making do. They're looking for opportunities to collaborate, to partner, and to really optimize the things that they're doing, both from their project management and data collection standpoint, but also in partnerships with other organizations who are doing similar things. So it was a very optimistic environment, I would say, for me to see all the organizations working together and to be able to be a part of it representing SurveyCTO.
Okay, so maybe now we can end on a lighter note and talk a bit more about some of our personal experience in Dubai, but also at DIHAD. So was there something that surprised you on any stand or booth that you saw in the exhibition?
I think the escape tent, there were some workshops that were being held inside of life-size refugee tents, which were really cool. But there was also an organization, I forget which one, but it had a tent that was like an escape room, but an escape tent. And we wanted to go inside, but it was so popular that we didn't get the chance. But I thought it was very cool. And that at the conference, a lot of the engagement that different booths wanted to have was experiential. Take our quiz, walk through our tent, engage with us. And it was, to me, it seemed like it was less focused on giveaways and things that we were handing out.
I thought it was interesting just to see the armored vehicles for medical supplies and medical care. One, they're huge. They I wouldn't want to mess with that vehicle. But just to see I don't know, just to see the innovation in terms of even getting supplies and getting care to these hard to reach places. I thought it was cool to be able to, tour an ambulance and see everything that they can get on those trucks.
Yeah, definitely. And I second that, Maria, in terms of the interactivity. I went to a booth of a health organization, and I will probably mispronunciate it. It's quite difficult. The Yeryüzü Doktorları organization based in Turkey. And it was so pleasant because they were able to to set up a very warm environment, almost welcoming you to get in and to take some coffee or some tea, and they would offer you some Turkish delight. So I found that very pleasant. What about food? Did you try anything new or anything that was particularly exciting that week?
Well, obviously, the Portuguese food that I had when we went to the burgers, that was if I was strictly going off food, I would say the Portuguese food, but the Portuguese food did lack, a dancer spitting fire, so I have to say overall, the barbecue that we had in the desert with what do you call them? The people that use the fire. Um, but that I would say was overall that because of the entertainment.
The experience, for sure. Yeah. And about the Portuguese food, Catherine, I invite you to come to Portugal and and I will, it's always different when you are eating a food outside of the country. So if you liked it, I invite you to come to taste our food in Portugal.
I tried something new for the first time. It was actually thanks to you, Marta. Our first night, we went to a Lebanese restaurant, and there I tried a dish that I never tried before. It was like a very thin piece of flatbread that was a little bit crispy, and on top of it, there is like ground beef, but it was like flattened ground beef with spices. It looks a little bit like a mini pizza without any cheese or sauce. What is it called, Marta? Because I thought it was really good.
I know. I'm trying to find the name. I think it's Za'atar, but I don't know how to pronounce it. But it's Za'atar pizza, I think. I think that's the name.
It was really good. Really good. Along with the hummus and pita bread, meat from the grill like kebabs and fresh salads. So yeah, I think you will not get bored if you ever visit Dubai. There's lots to try.
Definitely, either from the Middle East or international food. It's a great hub for food in general. Well, thank you so much for joining me for this episode today. I hope you had fun. Thank you.
We did. Thanks, Marta.
Survey and Beyond, the data collection podcast, is brought to you by SurveyCTO. To find out more about SurveyCTO and how it ensures reliable, secure, and scalable data collection, visit www.surveycto.com. And make sure to search for Survey and Beyond the Data Collection podcast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at SurveyCTO, thanks for listening.